What's up, guys? I'm Nick Furman. This is Furman on Film. So glad to have you guys back with us today for round two, our second film. We got a lot of good content coming here today. If you happen to miss our first video a couple weeks back, we have a link up here above where you can check it out. Now, so you don't miss any content going forward, please like and subscribe below, and we'll keep you up to date on all the new stuff we got rolling out. Today, we've got a new list for you. We're going to be ranking all of the films of one director. We'll start with the bottom and work our way to the top and get through their entire oeuvre together. So we had to think to ourselves, what are we going to start with? Which director? There's so many to choose from. Well, as it turns out, there is a very big theatrical release coming up in the middle of December. We want to get you ready for the films of this man, one James Cameron. When I think of James Cameron, there's only one word that really comes to mind first. That word is spectacle. Here's a guy who has made so many blockbuster hits that you start to lose count. He's probably second only to Steven Spielberg in that regard. If you look at the list of the films that made the most box office money in history, you're going to find his name near the top, not once, but twice. Beyond the spectacle, he also is incredible for action vehicles, for spectacular special effects, for other little touchstones, things like melodrama in his relationships. So at this point, you may be asking yourself, why are we doing this list of James Cameron ranked? Well, I made a little teaser hint there at the beginning. If you caught that little Easter egg, you probably figured out that Avatar 2, The Way of Water, is debuting in theaters all across the States on December 16th. This is a long-awaited follow-up to the first Avatar film, which came 13 years ago in 2009 and made over $1 billion worldwide. So, we got to get you ready for what you're going to find when you encounter those blue Na'vi people and James Cameron once again. Without further ado, let's get down to our list. The films of James Cameron ranked. Number 8, Piranha 2, The Spawning. Did you know that James Cameron made a Piranha film? He did, yeah. Cameron started as a special effects guy for Roger Corman. And what happened was there was an Italian director who fired the previous guy, threw Cameron in there, and we get this flip. There's reports, varied reports about how much of the film was actually taken away from Cameron or how much of it was his own baby. And so maybe that accounts for some of the reason that it's just not very good. Now, The Spawning starts, like so many other films of the era do, with stupid white kids trying to canoodle. Only this time, it's in the bottom of some deep sea wreckage in scuba gear near some flotsam. Sounds like the beginning of a great movie, right? It's not. No, you know, the thing about The Spawning is that nobody is really acting like a human being in this one. There are people that are talking. There's all these people at their resorts, and they're interested in romance, and they like to communicate and flirt, and their horniness dial is all dialed up to about 50. But nothing real is really going on, okay? In this way, it's a bit like Porky's meets Jaws. I mean, in a way, it makes sense that Cameron would start here, right? I mean, considering he did probably more for underwater filmmaking techniques than just about anyone going. And he does grab the cool sound effects of the piranhas rushing through the water that you get from Dante's original. Speaking of Dante, I mean, I'm sure some of you are thinking, oh, okay, he just doesn't like creature features the way he's criticizing this. Well, let's pump the brakes. I love Joe Dante. I think the original Piranha is a kind of masterpiece. Dante made incredible films in the 80s. The Howling, The Burbs, Inner Space, Gremlins. You heard of these? All of these are fantastic films. And in fact, all of them are better than this film that we're talking about right now. Now, James Cameron did make a movie about flying fish, but I'd say you could skip it. Listen, guys, I need you to respect the sign and stand clear, please. We've got, there's a big hole here in the, it's not a hole though. It's more of a pit. It's a chasm, more of a ravine, crevasse, gorge, cavity, void. No, that's still not it. Number 7, The Abyss. The Abyss is early in Cameron's career, but it has many of the marks of a Cameron blockbuster. It's got grand spectacle and technological innovation, memorable characters, funny banter, innovative filming techniques, and a strong emotional core. That's really what sets The Abyss apart for me. It's about Ed Harris as Bud and Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, and about their connection and relationship on this bigger scale. I mean, sure, there's all kinds of things that he's pushing forward in terms of technology underwater. It's not just the gear and the things and the rovers that move around. It's also the breathable liquid, the oxygenated water. And we get cool terms like non-terrestrial intelligence. And we get these great idiosyncratic characters like Hippie and his little pet rat. And of course, The Abyss begins a trend of estranged couples who begin to find each other again in the midst of a terrifying ordeal. And we're going to see that again and again through the course of Cameron's filmography. This is also where we get the first signs of the more thorny aspects of Mr. Jim Cameron. There's legends on the set of The Abyss about lots of underwater filming at night, about building massive water sets in disused nuclear plants, about crew and cast members threatening to quit because of fear of drowning. This is a man who's driven and exacting and rigorous. So while he is known to be sort of a gentle Canadian offset, behind the lens, he could be a bit of a monster. And several of the actors that worked with him swore he was two different people and that they would never visit him again. Of course, one of them was Kate Winslet, and she's going to be in Avatar 2 in a month, so who knows? Maybe they smooth things out. Finally, my big dig on The Abyss is that it wants to be about 15 different films at once. I mean, what is it really? Like, is it a relationship drama? Is it an alien encounter? Is it a Cold War flick about nuclear missiles and about territory of space and sea and who owns what? I'm just not sure. But like I said, when Cameron gets in his wheelhouse at the end of his pictures, that's when you really start to see stuff move. And this one has some fantastic scenes between its cast towards the finale. The deep sea drag, the resuscitation, some of these elements which I won't even mention, they're fantastic. This is the first I can mention of great things coming for the Cameron blockbuster. All right, let's keep going. Number 6, Avatar.
What? Number 6?
Now you see by where this landed on my list that Avatar is not my favorite Cameron film.
That's it. Natiri, get my Ekron. We're going down there.
For a change, let's start with some of the lesser things about the picture. This one has about the subtlety of a sledgehammer. The mineral that they're trying to mine underneath the sacred tree is called unobtainium. Unobtainium, like not obtainable. And, you know, the army grunt played pretty well, actually, by Stephen Lang and versus the tree huggers. That whole narrative, it all just rings of these, like, very strong archetypes with very little nuance. He's trying to drive a point home about native peoples, about the sacredness of land and Mother Nature, but he's not doing it with all that much sort of care and delicacy. But then again, subtlety was never really Big Jim's strong point. Now, there are some positive things. Sigourney Weaver, always a sight for sore eyes. The actual visual spectacle of this film is remarkable. It took years to make. So much time was invested in the technology, and it created an entire world which we had never seen before. And then populated it with characters and animals which were just familiar enough to us that we had something to grab a hold of. And ultimately, Avatar is a fish out of water story. It's a master and apprentice story. It's about a guy learning to deal with a culture that's not his own.
You mean like The Last Samurai?
Yes. As a matter of fact, a lot like The Last Samurai. Which I think is ultimately the problem with Avatar, is that it's aiming for this really creative reimagination of the destruction of native peoples, but it falls prey to the white savior complex, which is critiquing in the first place. However, when we actually get down to it, and the final hour, when things really start to click into place, the final battle, that is just Cameron in his wheelhouse. That's him playing with his toys, with the guns and the ships and the hovercrafts and all of the tech he's got at hand. And nobody does that stuff like this guy does it. And so ultimately, I took away from Avatar about what I took away the first time on this rewatch. It's a pretty solid flick. It's not all that subtle or nuanced. It has some missteps. I'm not sure why it needed to be 2 hours and 45 minutes long, but nobody else but Big Jim could have made this one. And the last one for this list, number 5, Titanic. Ooh, this might be a little low for some people, but I feel like I've got it in just the right place for me. Gotta be honest, guys, I've got mixed feelings on this one. I mean, once again, there's a lot going on here. On the one hand, this is kind of a classic melodrama, an old-fashioned romance tale, like something we'd see out of the 40s and 50s with Hepburn and Tracy. And so we get our classic little meet cute. We get feeling like we can fly in the front of a boat. We get dancing an Irish jig in the bows of the ship with the plebeians. We get some card copulation. And of course we have...
Jack, I want you to draw me like one of your French girls.
Right, that. Somehow, Cameron weds all of that romance stuff to a disaster flick, like something you would see in the Towering Inferno or the Poseidon Adventure. Snakes on a plane! Yeah, and there are plenty of others, like Get Off My Mother! So, old JC sinks this boat just like the scientists believe the actual Titanic went down. So we get an actual vertical ship. We've got people hanging on for dear life. We have falling bodies, extras. We have cavernous rooms being filled up with water. And we have historical details, period piece, costume drama elements, like the band that played as the ship was sinking. As usual, Cameron is delving into these deeper issues about class distinctions. So in this film, it's literally represented by the fact that the poor were in the bottoms of the boats and were among those that didn't survive. But it's also about the bigger theme of arrogance and hubris, which went with the making and sailing of the Titanic in the first place. And yet, on the other hand, some of the melodrama and romance were just a bit much for me. I mean, I really liked where the first hour of the film is going, when they're connecting and growing close and all the Jack and Rose stuff is happening. And I kind of liked, or at least appreciated, the spectacle, the entertainment, the impressive scale of the last hour and a half of the film. But to have those two crammed together is just a little tonally jarring to me. But by far my biggest nitpick, I'll share with you now. I'm sure I'm not the first or the last person to think of it. At the very end of the film, oh, spoiler alert to a film that was made in the 90s, Rose is about to make her sort of final ascent to the sky, so to speak. And as she is on her deathbed, she sees a little image of her, Jack and Rose, hand in hand up the Titanic steps together. Now, here's my question. Rose, after this ordeal in 1912, was married, had children. You see them in the course of the film for decades. So for her to go into the sky with Jack, that is a tough beat for Mr. Rose. Faithfulness for years, decades, and in the end, replaced by a young Leo. But who can really blame him? Anyway, the Titanic is, by all accounts, an incredibly impressive feat. The sheer number of extras, the set pieces, the design, the costumes, everything about it, it has stand as a pretty impressive thing. And I keep coming back to that same word with Cameron, spectacle. The Titanic is a remarkable feat in that regard. Okay, film friends, well, that wraps up the first half of our list of the films of James Cameron ranked. Please stay tuned next week. We're going to hit our top 4 and it promises to be a doozy. Please, again, if you are not following along with our content, we ask you to like and subscribe below so that we can keep you informed of new stuff coming your way. We'd also like to recommend that you check out FurmanOnFilm.com. Our site is up, it's live, and it's loaded with content and reviews for you to check out, comment, feedback. There's even a place where you can request a review from yours truly. I'd love to see what you got for me. You can join our mailing list there as well. Again, we got lots of content coming in the days ahead. More Cameron content coming soon to you before Avatar 2 hits theaters. I'm Nick Furman. This is Furman on Film. Stay firm, my friends.
Jack, I want you to draw me like one